Where is this guy? We've been waiting forever.
That's right. Good evening, ladies and germs. No, just kidding.
You should have announced it first.
That's right. Yeah, so it's coming out to me first. We're gonna do this official.
You're so funny. Yeah, if you want to. Of course.
Ladies and gentlemen, from beautiful Lodi, New Jersey, Joe Dell.
Yay!
Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joe Dell. I am a musician and the author of the book titled Goin Over. Goin Over was released on December 7th, 2013. Now, we're going to go back to the roots of the book itself. The book itself stems from an album that was done with my band Sleepy Hollow back in 2001. I had a concept that I was working on since 1993. It was a concept on the term going over. Now, going over was a term used back in the late 80s. It was pretty much a drug reference. It was when a person in the Bergen County area was going to head over to New York City to pick up any variation of drugs. They would say to a person, "I'm going over, you need?" It was a code term that was used so other people would not know what they were speaking of. Now, this was popular very much in the underground at those times, okay? It was very much frowned upon as opposed to these days where people wear shirts bragging about what they're using these days. So, the album concept started around '93, had the idea for it. I had my first band, Spectrum Green. We never got to the point where we were going to create the storyline for what the album was going to be. So, fast forward to my band Sleepy Hollow, 1999. We released an EP back in 2000, and then afterwards, we had some situations with our rhythm section showing up late. So my guitar player, Matt Schwartz, and myself started working on this lengthy piece of music, which was segmented off by certain, just like the sales. No, but it was a lengthy piece of music that we created. And it was a variations of styles. It had, a progressive side to it, section, more of a funky rock section, late 60s, speed metal section from the late 80s, mid-late 80s, and then we had the rap metal section that was from the 90s and so on. So we had this lengthy piece of music, and I thought about it, and I said, you know what, this is a perfect piece of music to create my going over concept along with. So we worked out this, the storyline of this character, Tony Peace, and, it grew into this 22-minute, epic, pretty much, where each section of the song represented something else. The beginning was, I'm not going to have any decorations, but no, but so it started off with an acoustic piece with flutes. That was the birth, and then, the hard rock became the marijuana section, the fat became, the funky section became the acid section, speed metal coke, so on and so forth. And that became that piece of music. Now within this, I had an idea. I was getting into this album by a band called Blind Guardian, okay? It was Nightfall of Middle Earth. And in this album, which, it's a European band, very big. They were, I think, the first prog metal band in the new millennium to get a top 10 or something on the charts. I forgot what year, but I got into this album, and they would have an acted out scene music, but it was all, medieval and very Lord of the Rings type of music. But I wanted to do something up to date, so I thought the Going Over piece, we could put a little acting in between. So I got a friend of mine to play the main character, several other friends, one who was a professional actor, went to NYU to play the characters, and I created what we'd call a musi, where the music and the acting were equal amounts of time, which no one has done before. We released the album, underground classic cult. It's been selling actually up to $40, $50, on eBay these days. So, that was The Incarnation. Now fast forward to 2010. A good friend of mine, Pat Gesualdo, who runs the DAD program, which is a beautiful program helping disabled children to get past barriers, mental and physical, by using music, drums in particular. And he asked me to play some keyboards on a project. So I was in the midst of transposing old music, classical music from Carlo Gesualdo, an ancestor, violin parts to keyboards, whatever. And during that period of time, I was in a bad car accident. So I couldn't play keyboards anymore. I was pretty much disabled. I had a halo vest on, everything. So I couldn't do anything else because I had scar tissue damage in my hands. But if I typed a little at a time, I could bear it, the pain. So I was like, you know what? I'm writing my book. So I decided to write Goin Over, my book. And people started asking me if it's going to be about my life. And I said, no, my life isn't that interesting to make a book. But I started to develop the storyline for this Going Over book. And the mainstay is out of Lodi, New Jersey, my hometown, which I thought would be a good place to start it. And I wanted to structure it around drugs, both sides. See, the book cover, if you can see, I'm going to show you now, is starting off with this imagery, which I had envisioned, is a painting of the George Washington Bridge at night. And in the cover, you can see the devil's face in the moon. And on the other side of the George Washington Bridge, the New York side, you can see a baby dropping a hypodermic needle with tracks on its arm. And that is an imagery that's supposed to point out the fact that every drug addict, junkie, whatever, because people see the guy on the street and go, look at this waste of life, he should die, blah, 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 blah. They don't realize that was a beautiful baby at one time. That was someone's beautiful child. And something went wrong in that person's life to lead them to where they are at that point. And no one ever gets to hear that whole story. You see that person on the street, but you don't see what happened to that person. You don't get to see the buildup, what leads to that point in their lives. And this is what I wanted to present in the book, okay? And I start off with the main character, Tony. Tony Peace is my main character in the book, and we start off at his birth, okay? Troubled birth, almost dies at birth. After the birth, he's a child. He's abused as a child, okay? Because one thing I found, knowing people who do drugs, a lot of them go back to child abuse, okay? It's not always the story, but I'd like to say that it's usually about 65% of the time. You could see something stems back to their childhood, something happened in their childhood. So I put that in my story. So now that being said, I have a book to finish, okay? I got to bring it from point A to point Z. And I have to put it concisely through a whole story without losing a section, without dragging out a section, without putting something in that's not believable. It doesn't feel like it belongs there. And I'd never written a book before, but I had help from a friend of mine who is good friends with a vice president at HarperCollins, and he used to help pick out stories. So he helped me develop the storyline. I started off with about maybe 200 pages. I thought my book was finished. He looked at it, he read it, he said, "You have an outline." And I'm like, all right, I'll go back to this. And I reread it again, and I realized that's what I had. There were no strong details. There was nothing that brought you into this person's life. It just told a basic story of this character. So now I had to return into the book. And this is where I delved into my childhood. I delved into some of my personal life. I put some of my soul into this book, okay? And a lot of people around me as well that I grew up with. A lot of good friends of mine who I grew up with, who I love dearly, who I've lost. And I wanted to put a little bit of them into this book too. It's all fictional, but I wanted to put their soul into it. I wanted to bring it to people where they could read this story on multitudes of levels, that you're not going to get bored. It's not a lesson book. It's not something you're just going to sit here and learn. It's going to be an interesting story. I put action in there. I put something that each chapter, I try to make it where it leads to the next one, making you want to read the next chapter. And I've gotten feedback on the book already, where I've been told that they can't put the book down. And I'm like, good, I succeeded. I succeeded because I didn't want to, the artist, she has a copy, she read the book, and she tells me, she goes, Joe, it seems like you rushed the story. And I'm like, what do you mean rush the story? Like you don't, lag on any section. I go, I didn't want to. It's boring. I didn't, because this is the new millennium. This is, I'll use an example. We just got the Wrestling Network, and they have vintage old wrestling matches, from the 70s. And I'm watching these wrestling matches, just to see, the past, and I'm going, wow, these are boring. I was like, it takes so long. I mean, it takes about 5 minutes before they even start the match. Because I'm a new millennium guy. We all are. We want stuff fast, quick. We want stuff to move. That's why the action movies are hot. That's why everything like that, it goes. They don't want, anything that drags. So I tried to make each chapter its own little story, so you don't get bored. I put action in there. Then I lead it to the next one. And I try to sew this little story together where where you get to the last chapter. You don't have to, you're not in chapter 22, and you're wondering, oh, wait a minute, was this back in chapter 3? Because I know that drives me crazy. I mean, I try to write a book that everybody can read, not just, your professor in a college somewhere. It's where it lays itself out. You don't need to remember. The reader doesn't have to do work. People don't want to do work when they read. They want to enjoy a book as a story. And that's what I did. I wrote it to, each chapter stands alone. And being a musician, that's what I tried to do. I tried to make a story the same way I would enjoy, say, Pink Floyd The Wall or The Who's Tommy, where each one of those little songs stand alone as a song, but yet it's a whole concept album. I wanted my book to replicate that. So, that being said, I brought my main character and I put him through a multitude of tragedies. And as he goes through these tragedies in life, each one leads him deeper and deeper into the world of drugs. Okay? Each one, and this is what he's trying to do. Each one, the last drug he did wasn't enough. The first drug buried the pain he had, sorrows of a broken heart. Then he loses his mother. And I don't want to give too much away for anyone who didn't read the book, but, and now all of a sudden that wasn't enough. Now he starts popping pills because the booze and the dupes, it wasn't enough. Now he needs pills. Now he's burying himself deeper. And as the story goes on, which I'm not going to reveal, what happens, but each one brings him into that next stage. Now I want to show the yin and the yang, both sides of the story of the drug addict. I wanted to show you the drug addict. I want to show the character on how he becomes that drug addict. Then, on the other side of the coin, I want to show the friends and family members. I wanted to show the people who are getting hurt, the people who he's stealing from, the people who are watching him go in and out of rehab, in and out of prison, in and out of all these facilities, and rooting for him. The people who sit there and root for this person to be saved, to bring him back down to the normal level, or would be considered normal. And I wanted to show both sides of that coin, and I think I did that in this book. Now, the music side to it, that music I spoke of earlier, comes in the book. Now, why did I put that in there? I wanted to put a multimedia in the book. I wanted to do something different. So, in doing so, I made it that the main character creates this music with his band. The album cover is the book cover, and you discover that when you read the book. So now it leads into, I believe, somewhere in the middle of the book where he creates the album. So I put the CD in. Now for the first time, a person gets to hear the dimensions. The person who's doing the acting out on the CD is your main character. You're getting to hear your main character talk. Okay? Not in a spoken word book, not in an audio book. This is you're hearing him as if it's. I want the reader to be confused. I want them to start to question, is this a real story? Is this a real guy that I want them to, because in doing so, they fall in love with the character. In doing so, they begin to get drawn into the character himself. And at that point, I've won the reader over. And that's, that was the whole basis of the book itself.
How's everything?
Anything more, I give away the story. I don't want to do that right now. Now, as far as on the publishing side of the book, I was hoping to get HarperCollins to publish the book. I received a letter back stating my story is not what they would be looking for. I mean, granted, it was given to the religious section of HarperCollins, which, you know, wasn't the best section, but, you know, with a little letter wishing me the best of luck and everything. So I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm putting it out. And the beauty of the internet is self-publishing. Now, if anybody else out there wants to write a book and doesn't want it changed, want to do it their own way, I recommend self-publishing. Because from knowing someone who's close to the professional publishing company, you're not making any money. They're not financially backing you. And when you do all the work to sell that book, they're taking a large percentage of that book's profits. By going to a self-publisher, I went to Infinity Publishing. Wonderful company, did wonderful work on the book. You promote it. You get your book out there. You take your percentages, okay? I take 30% off of wholesale, okay? A retail rather. That's a beautiful percentage for what's out there. If you try getting your first book out there, now I could put my own ads out. I could promote it on the internet. I could do what I want in my own book. And honestly, if you really have your heart and soul in a certain book, do it, because out there is so difficult to get a book published. There are hundreds and hundreds of agents out there. There are millions of books being created every week, which I did not know of. And in doing so, I did the same thing that we did with our album. Self-published, got it out, and now it's out there and available. Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, a bunch of places that I don't even know of, but it's out there to be put out there. But I have nothing left to say on this book personally, so I'm going to actually start the Q&A now. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask me any questions that you wonder about the book or anything. Questions, anyone? Yes, young lady back there.
Do I appear in the book at all?
I don't remember. There's no characters that appear in a book in their own sense, but there have been characters based after certain people in my life, yes. Do we have any other questions that I could answer for somebody? Yes, you, gentleman in third row. 2 years. 2 years of writing. It took 3 rewrites, excuse me. Oh, a little parched. It took 3 writes. I had done the first one, which was pretty much the rough draft, the outline. And then I revised the book again, and as I created it, it didn't seem as a complete story. So I edited it 3 times, 3 edits, and I had to put little details in to complete that person's life story, because it's a tricky thing to put a person's complete life story into one book without overdoing it or leaving holes in it. My first edit didn't have even a childhood. It started from a birth and went to an 11-year-old boy, which afterwards it's like there's a whole section of this kid's life that's missing. I got to put something in there. So I created his childhood. I put something in his childhood that was very fundamental to the development of my character. But thank you for that question, sir. Ominous stranger. Any other questions? Oh, yeah, gentleman in the last row.
Will you be writing another book?
I'm sorry?
Will you be writing another book?
That question has remained to be seen. I actually am thinking about, believe it or not, writing a book on health the next time around, which is completely left field from this one. But I actually obtained mono when I was 18, became very ill, and I learned a lot of things about health, nutrition. Like one of the things, I'm going to put something quick here, is that antibiotics destroy the body. Antibiotics are very dangerous. And I learned this from being put on them for acne, okay? Now, children are getting hurt by this now, and no one knows this, because there's something called a candida infection that a person gets. Now, what's going on now out in the industry, they're giving animals antibiotics to protect from getting bacteria. But in doing so, you're ingesting these antibiotics. They kill good bacteria in your stomach lining. In doing so, it allows the candida to grow in your body and contaminate your organs. So one of the best things to do is get a lot of acidophilus in your system and try to stay away from non-organic meats. But this is a real serious situation in America. No one even knows about this. So I'm thinking about maybe writing a book in that department, because for my own health, I did so much research, I have enough now to create a book. But thank you, sir, for that question. Any other questions from our big crowd? Yes, sir.
Because of your tremendous talent in writing a book, which is difficult to do, could you make efforts to have Hollywood studio film this book? And if a Hollywood studio doesn't pick it up, like Paramount Pictures or 20th Century Fox or Warner Brothers, can you have it for HBO or a TV show or a TV series or a movie of the week?
Excellent question.
Or cable or something that goes to cable.
That was my answer.
I know it's difficult getting
Lifetime.
a movie made, but there may be 800,000 stories circulating here. But you certainly have the potential for having a movie made of this book, and also you would get more money than just a book being published. You would get possibly a percentage of what the movie will make, so that will give you enough income to go on and write other books or other movies.
Excellent question. And yes, it's actually, I've been in contact with a gentleman who was talking about creating a rough draft for a movie plot from the book. The word escapes me. Someone help me. What do they call? I'm sorry.
A treatment?
No.
Or
When they create the storyline for a movie.
Screenplay?
Screenplay. There we go. Thank you very much. But but doing a screenplay. But yes, a very good question. A good friend of mine, Steve, who actually just passed away last month, God rest, owner of a restaurant in New York City. He was one of the few people to actually get to read my original manuscript, or one of the original manuscripts. And he pointed out to me, he said, Joe, you know the one thing I noticed about this book? The dialogue. Because I put a lot of dialogue in that book, okay? A lot of characters. I put personality into the characters, the way they talk. And he said, you know what? I can picture this as a movie. And I would love to do that, because it's, it's a storyline that I don't think has even been done yet. There's a lot with, famous people, stories about how they did drugs, or there's nothing that transcends the child into the adult and shows this world like that story. So yes, I would very much like to get it into some film. And if I don't get it professional, I'll go to NYU. I'll get somebody who knows how to film and could create a movie for me, or at least do something in a black and white sense. And one of the ideas I had for the movie itself, because it shows how he transcends into this world, this dark world of drugs, to actually do a Wizard of Oz in reverse, which I don't think has been done yet, where dollars are going down every day. That was my 3D version of this. No, but I wanted to transcend it into like a Wizard of Oz in reverse, where the beginning of this movie starts out in color, and then as the movie goes on, it slowly turns into black and white, but so minimally through the movie that the watcher won't notice until, subconsciously they might pick up on it or fast forward it and see that, wait a minute, what happened to the color? And then I get to screw with their heads a little, and they're changing their little, what's the color of my TV? It's screwed up. No, we got to buy a new TV. No, but seriously, yeah, that's definitely something that I'm going to be looking forward to in the future, the near future, probably in springtime.
Thank you.
And thank you for that question, sir. Do we have any other questions that anybody would like to ask? You, the man with the Yankee hat. You look like you have a question that you've been...
I read the book.
Oh, did you?
But I think the book was really good.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions that we could have? Or somebody could give me an idea of what, they'd like to hear me talk about the book. I'm trying my best not to give the storyline away, but, to get into the book, it's tricky, because to give a little of the story away, I'm giving a whole chapter away. Like I said before, each chapter is its own little story within. So, you know, you could read chapter 18 and not read the whole book, and you could read that one chapter and have a story that you just read. You know? Oh yes, the lady in the back.
I'm the lady in the back.
Yes, ma'am.
You said the book is fiction, correct?
Correct.
But part of it is from the people in your life.
Correct.
How do you feel? How did you feel while you were writing it?
I put my soul into it. I put my soul into the book. I'll tell you a little story, because one of the tragic things that happened to me while I was a teenager, I lost my mother to cancer. Okay, which I think there's a lot of things. It's not just a guy on drugs in this book. There's a lot of life instances in this book that I think people can relate to. I decided after, I believe, the first edit to make the main character's mother pass away. Or it might have been in the original one. So I had to, you know, write the details for this section. Now, my mother had passed away at this point 20 years earlier. So I didn't know what to do. I was a little stuck. And a friend of mine said, you know, why don't you talk to some people in the past? You know, maybe they'll help, you know, get the creative juices going. I decided to take a trip up to the cemetery and visit my mother's grave. Okay? And I sat there and I looked up at that wall. And I looked at the most beautiful woman I ever known in my life that cared about me. Like, I always compare her to the woman in the beginning of the Godfather, the mother who gets blasted by the shotgun just to save her son Vito. My mother would have done that for me. And I looked up there, and I just thought how I lost her early, and how wonderful she was, and how my life was empty, you know, after she left me. And I left the cemetery in tears, and I didn't stop. I wanted to get a little Dunkin' Donuts, but I didn't stop. I was like, you know what, I'm going home. I got to bring this feeling with me home with me, back to that computer. And when I did, I put that section in, and I think one of the most graphic, detailed, and deepest paragraphs I wrote is in that section of the book. I mean, that's one of them, let alone a multitude of friends. And another part I put in there is a very personal character who's based after my wife, who's actually in the crowd today. Say hi to everybody, sweetie.
Hi.
And you know, and she told me how she would have felt if I would have died,